does that even mean, Bowers Game Corner?
Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again today for another game review. And today, I'm very excited to check out WildLands, the Unquiet Dead. This is an expansion to WildLands, game that I've been smitten with recently. This is going to add an additional faction, and this faction can also be used as an expansion to the base game. So you can use it as characters you play with in the game, going around collecting crystals and boom, beating people up, or you can use it as undead people who rise from the grave, who everyone can control and can move around and can attack people with. It's an interesting sounding expansion, but is it good? Let's open it up and I'll tell you what I think. Alrighty then, we're going to take a look at what you're going to get inside of WildLands, the Unquiet Dead expansion. So first and foremost, we have a handy dandy rule booklet, and this is all you're getting right here. This is just about the faction, and this is how to use it as an expansion when you are not using the faction. So you can either play as the undead, or you can use the undead as an expansion to the base game, and I'll show you how both of those work. So what you're going to get with this game is 6 little miniatures, and they will always be using green, and it's only going to come with one of the green little round things. So if you're playing as the zombies, you're always going to have to be green. The zombies and the undead, I should say, not zombies. But they look gorgeous. I mean, what do you expect? And you're going to get 6 more cards. Each one of them is only going to have 3 health. And interestingly enough, half of them are going to be melee, and then half of them are going to be short range. So this one actually puts a good deal of forward planning into it, because you kind of want to have, normally you want to have them spread out or all clumped together depending on the faction you are, but with these guys you kind of want to have one long range and one short range together, and they kind of work as a team, which is an interesting aspect to bring into the game. Also, there's some different aspects on their cards. They don't have any of the 3 wild cards that you're familiar with. They only have the 2 wild cards, and also they only have 2 draw 2 cards, which does kind of stink a little bit. But you'll notice there's only 2 symbols. There's the skulls, and then there's the hands. And the skulls can control any 3 of the characters that have the skulls, and the hands can control any 3 of the characters that have the hands. And they also have every single special ability on there except for fly. They can't fly, but everything else they can do. But there you go. That's pretty much how you're going to use them as their own separate faction. The other big thing with using them as a faction in the game is that instead of only having 3 cards to collect a shard, you have to have 4 cards to collect a shard, which is a big bummer. It really does stink. But you do have 1 extra unit, which is nice as well, but at the same time, that also means that that's 1 extra point other people are going to be able to collect. And since they only have 3 health, which is relatively low, they can be killed relatively easy. Now, if you want to use them as expansion, that's a really interesting aspect to the game. So if you use them as expansion, you take the green parts off, and when someone's character dies, so when someone dies, one of these guys is going to replace them on the board. And that is essentially a movable character that everybody can move, and everybody can attack with. You just can't pick up shards or anything like that. You can't pick up the crystals with them. But you can kind of use these guys to attack other people and weaken them so that you can kind of go in for the killing blow, which is an interesting aspect, because a lot of the times you'll have the cards you need to attack with one person, but not with another person. And now you can attack with these guys and then maybe finish them off with someone else. It adds a whole extra dimension to the game. And I really, well, I'll tell you the final part, but I really like it as an expansion, and also as, well, we'll get to that at the end. But that in the nutshell is how you're going to do with WildLands, the Unquiet Dead. Alrighty then, WildLands, the Unquiet Dead from Osprey Games. What are my final thoughts? Let's go over the pros, let's go over the cons. First, on the con side, if you didn't like WildLands for one reason or another, I don't think this is going to change your opinion on the game. Now, that being said, if you're using this purely as an expansion and not using it as, you know, someone playing as the undead, it does speed up the game a little bit, which I think might turn some people on, because some people, I have heard online, some people are like, it's just a little bit too long for what it is. I personally don't agree with that, but if that is an issue you had with the game, this could potentially fix it using it as this, because having those extra little characters out there that are just essentially going to be moved around and beat people up is an interesting little touch to the game. You can only use it as green, because they only come with the 1 little green base. Whatever. Somebody complained about it at one of my game nights, and I was like, does it really bug you that much? Like, yeah, I want to play as blue. And I was like, well, you can't play as blue. You're playing as green. So, whatever. It barely fits into the base box. So I'm going to tell you it fits into the box, but you do have to jimmy rig it a little bit. It would have been nice if it would have fit in there a little bit more conveniently. Like you have to put it in a slot and then like, you know, you put a rubber band around the cards and put them in just the right spot. But it does all fit in the base box, which is nice, but it's just barely fits in the base box. And I really don't have any other cons. You know, I loved WildLands, and this is an outstanding expansion that bumps the game up even more. And if you have WildLands, if you're enjoying WildLands, it's a no-brainer. Get it. Simple as that. Period. End the discussion. So what I like about it. First and foremost, I love the faction. I do. I like the faction a lot. And it takes you 2 games, I think, to really get into the faction. The first time, I spread it all around. I was like, oh, man, I'm going to be able to go pick up all these crystals because all my guys are all over the place. I got an extra guy that can pick up crystals. And I have an extra guy to pop up and attack people. And then as I started to play it, I was like, oh, but playing 4 cards to pick up crystals really, really sucks. Let me say that. It is just so hard. You don't think about it. But it's like, getting 4 of those cards at the same time is really difficult, especially with all the attacking and the moving and everything like that. So what I found, I think this faction is best for, is actually just kind of grouping up and fighting together. And that's what, the second time I played with it, I really had a lot of fun, because I was like, all right, I'm gonna make a long-range guy and a short-range guy, and then a long-range guy and a short-range guy, and try and keep them together, relatively close to each other, so they can kind of team up on people. So that way I can be attacking from long-range and attacking from short-range. And I do like the faction. I think it's a very cool faction. I think it's a unique faction. It feels different. And as a faction, if that was just the expansion as a faction, I think it would add enough to the game to recommend it to you. But where this expansion really takes off, in my personal opinion, is when you don't use them as a faction, and you use it as the expansion where the undead pop up after people die. And if you're like me, when you play this game, there's normally some confrontation, a good deal of confrontation, people beating each other up. And that really changes things up, because you can essentially use any of your cards that you want to use these undead guys to attack. And while you don't get points for doing it, being able to take someone's character off the board is huge, or being able to weaken them enough so that you can finally do the killing blow with like a different character. I really, really like this as an expansion. And that's actually another con that I have with this game, is that I wish that you could play with the faction, because I really like the faction, and the faction as an expansion. So I wish you could have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, instead of choosing one or the other. But the fact that they are both there, if you want to play with the faction or without the faction, I still like. And I would never, if no one picks the undead faction, I will always use that part of the expansion where the undead rise, because I think it's just a really cool concept. It works really well. It adds an extra layer to the game without making the game any more complex. You just got to teach it like, all right, when someone dies, this guy's going to pop up. You can't collect points with them. You don't get any points for killing them, but you can control them. They can attack people. Yes, it makes a great game even better. WildLands, The Unquiet Dead, slap a Bauer's best seal on it. This bumps it into the 9 territory for me. Must-own expansion, in my personal opinion, if you love WildLands. Great, great, great. Plus, it fits in the base box, even though it is a tight little squeeze. So there you go. That is WildLands, The Unquiet Dead. Excellent expansion to an excellent game, and I just can't wait to see what's coming out next from WildLands. If you enjoyed this review, please sure to click on that subscribe button down below and in the comments below. Let me know, have you ever seen a dead body outside of like a morgue or something like that? You know, like obviously you go to funerals to see a dead body or whatnot. I did. It was actually really, really, oh man, it was bad. I was in Denver. I think I was about 21 or 22 years old. I saw a dead frozen guy. Like, he was a homeless guy. It was really sad, but I was like, oh, man, that's terrible. And, yeah, I didn't know what to do. I'm not going to incriminate myself, but I just, you know what? We're just going to stop there. I didn't do anything, like, super illegal, but yes, that is the one time I've seen a dead body outside of that, in real life, at least. Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever seen a dead body, dead person, outside of, typical dead people situations? Man, this question got weird. And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube.